Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning here at the JCC. My name is Jena, and this is your mind body recovery session for the week. And today you will need some form of a tool to use for a little bit of myofascial release and soft tissue work, whether that's a foam roller. I just have a lacrosse ball here. You could have a tennis ball, a nice squishy mobility ball, a rolling pin of sorts, or a nice firm water bottle, something cylinder there that you can work. We're going to kind of work on the ends of our quadricep muscles and even into our back. You'll also need a resistance band. It could be the ones with the handles on it, or it could be a stretchy one with no handles. If you don't have a resistance band at home, you can use a long towel or a strap of some sorts. Ideally, we do want a resistance band if you have one nearby. And then you'll need a spot by the wall eventually, or a chair, a couch, ottoman, something like that, and some padding for underneath your knee, pillow or something. So let's all start with, we're going to come to the ground, and we're going to lay on our backs. And again, this is all about recovering and just really working through some different motions, stretches. Some of it's going to be just activation to get the muscles to lengthen. But let's start drawing a circle with a bent knee. The other leg can be straight on the ground if you would like, or starting out, it can be bent as well. I'm going to keep my knee, my inactive leg, bent and the foot on the ground. So circling here, nice and easy through that hip joint. Keeping the knee bent. Always taking notice of any popping, clicking, snapping, clunking, whatever term you want to use. And switch directions. The key word is should. Things should move smoothly. Things shouldn't always be popping, clunking, snapping, but let's quotation should. And that leg that you just got done circling around, I want you to grab the back of that upper leg, just interlace those fingertips and hold that leg there. And we're going to bend and extend the knee a little bit here. This is where if you don't quite have the mobility to grab the back of the leg and extend the knee, you might have to have a strap, depending upon your hip mobility. Don't worry about hugging it in tight right now. Just hold it where it feels comfortable and somewhat relaxed. We're going to go to that other side. So you'll bend the other hip and start to circle that thigh bone in the hip socket. And you might as well take some long, relaxing exhales. Go ahead and switch that direction. And let's go ahead and grab the back of that leg, upper leg. Interlace those fingertips, just relax wherever it feels neutral, relaxed for you, and just extend and bend that knee. And arms are going to come down to the ground and pressing into the ground just to kind of stabilize into a little A position or V. And both knees are going to make circles now together, almost like a little froggy or whip kick in the water, pulling those thighs in using the muscles, pushing them out to the sides of the room, raising those tippy toes on the ground, and coming back in through the midline of the body. We are going to switch directions. So you'll go down through the midline of the body till the tippy toes touch the ground. Open those knees out, pull them up towards your armpits, and then pull them together as they come over your belly. And breathe. And relax those feet on the ground. Okay, and just relax the leg muscles. We're going to work on the pelvis. So we're just going to be doing some scooping of the pelvis. And you can do a gentle little glute lift off the ground if you want to. It doesn't have to be a super high hip lift here, just tilting the pelvis back and forward, back and forward. Just feel that lower back come off the ground as the hip bones go up towards the ceiling. And then as you tilt your pelvis, the pubic bone goes up towards the ceiling. The lower back gently presses in towards the ground. Contracting the glutes to help tilt that pelvis back. And relax the pelvis. Just let the knees and the thighs kind of fall in towards your chest as if you're doing a knee hug, but you're not going to hang on to your legs with your hands. Just rest those lower legs, let them flop down onto the upper legs. And you're going to go ahead and start to do some little circles with your pelvis. Tiny little circles. So it's like you're still drawing circles with your knees, but the motion is kind of rocking side to side with your hips. And you're going to go the other direction. Again, you'll just be kind of rocking to the outside of the left hip. Not the whole outside edge there. And then the right. And relax those feet down on the ground. You can extend those legs all the way out into a full extension position here. Arms are going to come to a T position at the side of the body here. Thumbs are facing up towards the ceiling. I want your shoulder blades glued to the floor. Okay. So oftentimes I'll have people say, well, when I'm laying on my back, shouldn't my lower back be touching the ground? If your legs are straight, your lower back will not be touching the ground because your glutes, hopefully you have some muscles in the back of your hips, your glutes, and there's a little natural curve in your lower back. If you have a rounded lower back, it's probably, you won't have a curve in your back, but you're not trying to keep your back flat by all means. You are trying to kind of keep your rib cage in a stable position without excessively arching your back. All right, so we are going to start to do, let's start from a T position, And bring those thumbs together gently over the head and then back to the T position. Do not force anything as always, just go through the motion your shoulder allows you to go through. Thumbs may not touch, in other words, depending upon how your shoulders are feeling today. Checking in each week, just going through some of these motions. And bring your arms out in a T again, still facing the ceiling. You're going to bring one arm up to a vertical position, and you're going to grab the other hand on the back side of that elbow and just hug it across your chest. Oftentimes we start to shrug and bring that shoulder towards the ear. Keep that shoulder down. And again, just pull that upper arm into the chest. And breathe here. We're going to open that arm up and just switch. The other arm comes to vertical, grabbing the back of the elbow and just pulling that upper arm right across the chest here. And again, breathe. And release that arm. So let's go ahead and grab, I want you to grab your resistance band at this particular time. And we are going to work on using the traction of the band. Now, ideally, I like to use these bands for what we call distraction, or you can kind of think about traction. So oftentimes I'll be hooking them to things in front of the body, behind the body, at the side of the body, and wrapping them around so that they're creating some traction. So in a perfect world, we would have this band attached to something behind us so we wouldn't have to use our arms, and we could work on playing around with our core. But I want the concentration to be more the hamstring and what's happening in the hip. The other thing, if I was working with you, I'm just going to show you some things because you might want to practice this at home. If you're able to, put your band around something, if you don't have one of these long O bands, you could always put your foot through the handle of one side of your band. Or again, just imagine that this wasn't connected. Here's my two handles. But anyways, if something was behind us, I would ideally attach it back there, and then I would be pulling on your hip socket with another band or your thigh to create some space in that joint, which really starts to help mobilize the hamstrings and the hips and everything. But today we're going to use our arms for our attachment point. So our attachment point is going to be us and the ground. So we're just grabbing onto our band like this. If you have your handles, you'll grab on or choke up a little bit on your band. Find where you need that resistance. And you're going to push down towards the floor. So this is going to be a little bit more strengthening with our arms just because we don't have an attachment behind us. So get those shoulders pinned. You're pushing down to the ground to help create a little bit of a lengthening through that hip joint. And then your job is to control it coming up and not letting the band just whip your leg up. If it was attached back here behind you in a high position, it'd be much harder. And I don't want us to hold our arms here because that's really, really hard. So we're coming down. So go ahead and continue to go into that position and then controlling it back up. For some of us, it's just going to feel like a nice stretch coming up. For others, you might have to really work to control the contraction of that hamstring because it might be confused in what to do. It really depends upon how well you are using those hamstrings in your day-to-day activities. So pushing down and controlling back up. You want to make sure you feel like that band is pulling your leg back a little bit. So you might have to keep grabbing down a little bit further on your band and shortening it, maybe adding a little more tension. If you have a couple bands, you could even double them up and do it that way as well. Same thing here. If your yellow band that I gave you is too light, you could place it around and you could grab on, right? And now it's going to be extra hard to push down. My red one is way, it doesn't even lengthen that far. So we're going to change the angle because let's be honest, straight down from our hip is not the only angle. Now we only have this arm positioning. We don't have the luxury of being able to position the band at different areas behind us. So we still hang on here and see if you can push that leg out to the side a little bit. Hold that and just try to relax the muscles as you keep that heel in contact with the ground and then control it up again. So I'm hoping you have a resistance band. If not, if you have just a towel, you want to still kind of create your own resistance. It just won't feel the same. And you'll almost have to follow it down with your arm. So pushing into that band and controlling on the way up. And we're going to do yet a third angle. We're going to go out to the side of that leg or of that hip. And then control on the way in. Push out. You want a little resistance if you can. And then control on the way in. This is just giving a little taste, but it would be significantly different if this band was attached to the side and you were really pulling against heavy resistance. So we're going to go on to that other side. We're starting with just the hamstring one. Now, I've been just keeping my other leg bent. So if you had your leg on the floor, that's absolutely fine. In fact, you're going to get a little bit more core out of it. Or you can keep that knee bent. Pushing against the resistance of the band, letting that band pull your leg back up. And let's angle it out at a 45, pushing out to the side again, letting that heel push into the ground. And then slowly control back up, controlling the band. Pushing out against resistance and controlling in. And let's do that last angle to the side of the hip, straight out, just pushing down against that resistance of your band, and then letting it pull your leg up, but yet controlling the resistance. Push. It's a little bit different than when we use it for just relaxing into. Again, I'm hoping it's a resistance band, so you can feel that. One more here. So we did a lot of movement in our hips. I'd like you to go ahead and grab either your foam roller or your medicine ball, your racket ball, your tennis ball, your rolling pin. Now, if you have a ball, we're only going to be able to do one side at a time. If you have a foam roller, You'll be able to place it. I'm just gonna set our timer, and we're gonna concentrate on this area right here. So you've got your hip. This is the top of my pelvis. Yes, I have a really high waistline. Top of my pelvis, okay? And then my rib cage right there. So we're concentrating in this area right here, right? That does the extension, all these motions in that lumbar area. These muscles, don't be afraid to dig into them and give yourself a little massage for a couple minutes on them. The positioning of your body is what's going to make the difference. So if you're on a foam roller, let's pretend this is my foam roller, you might start here and just gently roll so you're kind of equally distributing the weight. And then you might kind of lean off to the side so you're just getting the edge of that big muscle, okay? And then if you're using the ball, you're gonna place it on that back. You might have to lean away from it so there's not as much tension depending upon what ball you have. Maybe eventually you can lay your entire weight of your body and move around either up and down or side to side with that ball, okay? So really concentrating on that area. Yep, so you can start like that, and you can even get your buns on the ground on that foam roller and get on the edge of that big muscle, okay? So again, if you just wrap around and just grab, you can feel the edges of that muscle with your fingertips. That's what we're talking about, those big erector spinae muscles, quadratus lumborum. I promise you, the more work you do in these areas without aggravating them too much, you start to loosen up this lower back. You start to have less hip and knee problems. You start to have less shoulder and neck problems, right? So everything is connected. It's not going to feel the best, right? You got to breathe through it. I don't like to say no pain, no gain. So if you have a ball and you've been moving around on that ball, I want you to now move it over to the other side. If you're using your foam roller and you've really just been concentrating on manipulating one side, go to the other side. You're going to be maybe not shocked, but surprised, pleasantly surprised maybe to see, wow, there's a big difference in the physical feeling of these tissues from the right side of my body to the left side of the body. I can pick on my daughter, who is a very competitive hockey player, plays all year round. Complained about her back a few weeks ago, and I'm just like, well, you don't do anything I tell you to do. You don't do your foam rolling, you don't do your mobilization. Well, just bring me to the chiropractor, Mom. And I'm like, he's not going to adjust you. He's going to say the same thing I'm telling you. He gets there and he's like, oh, you shoot left, don't you? The whole left side of her body is like all stretched out, or whatever, and the right, it's all stretched out, and the right side's all tight, and he's just like, you need to stretch, and she could barely only flex one way, not the other. And so after working on her back, doing stuff like this manually, all of a sudden after 20, 30 minutes of doing all that, she was able to move around, touch her toes, no back pain. So it doesn't mean you have something wrong all the time with a disc or a vertebra. But if those muscles aren't moving, those chiropractors can't do your adjustments anyways. You're just so stiff. It's very hard for them to force those adjustments. And that's it on that side. Good. So again, this area, big part of being able to open up through the hips and the shoulders and definitely the back. So since we just mobilized that, let's cross those legs over. Okay, and we're just going to work on, you can put your hands on the ground if you want, or you can put them up here. We're just going to go side to side here, working on that lateral flexion, if you will. And oftentimes when we're doing this, we're kind of like this, right? So sit that spine up tall in its normal neutral position where you have a natural curve in your back, not back here, right? So get those muscles somewhat activated, and then you're going side to side. If you're at home, go up against your wall and move side to side. Because otherwise, if you're leaning forward, your vertebrae are stacked, and now you're compressing the front side of those vertebrae together. You're opening the back side, and those discs are being pushed back while you're moving. Not the best position to be in. Good. Let's do a couple little rotations. So we're sitting on our hips. We don't have to worry about them moving. We're trying to move the shoulders, the rib cage around our pelvis. And then go the other direction. So we're going to start to pay attention to our quadriceps. They originate up here on the hip bone, you might have heard me say before, on your pelvis. And they insert down here onto what you call your shin bone, right? Tibia and fibula. This is your patella tendons, where those big muscles come down and together, and they're attached to those bones down there. So their main purpose is to extend your knee or to flex the hip. So those kind of what those muscles do when they're contracting. But of course, when we sit, right, a lot, this part of the quads get all locked up, right? And then there's just this constant pull across the knee. We're going to open that up. You've got your foam rollers. You've got a ball. You've got a rolling pin, a water bottle. And I want you to just start massaging this area, whether you're going cross fibers like this or up and down, okay? It's not the hip bone. It is not the side of your hip and into that bone. It's in this soft tissue area. If I wanted to pinch, put my fingers in there and flex, I can feel where my hip bone is. It's right underneath there where those quads kind of come together and they're up there. So you're going to play around with that. Easiest way is to straighten out the leg of the side you're working and then bend the knee of the other side. And you just kind of rock on your toes here. I'm going to set my timer again. We're all concentrating on one side. It's a little bit of core work because you're kind of holding yourself up with your forearms. If you feel comfortable, you can lay your chest down, and then this one you can kind of just roll around a little bit, or you can still move. Just even holding the, pushing the hip flexors into your foam roller, your ball, your water bottle, and then bending and extending the knee is going to influence those tissues up there as well. Because again, the quadriceps extend the knee. So as I go into flexion in my knee, they're going to lengthen while I have pressure on those tendons, and then lengthen. And you can even go into internal and external rotation while you're putting a little pressure on those hip flexors. And that's just bending the knee and letting the lower leg go right to left like a little clock, tick-tock. So that was about 1.5 minutes up here on the high end of your quadriceps. We're now going to go down to the vastus medialis obliquus. Say that 3 times fast, right? And so you're going to bench, stay on that same leg, We're just gonna put whatever object we have, that foam roller. You have to strategically kind of angle your foam roller if it's one of those long ones, and just lay onto your side, and you're just gonna roll around on that VMO. So it's above the kneecap. It's that big meaty muscle right here where my fingers are. So my kneecap's right at the tip of my fingers, right on the inside, kind of top of the quad. I mean, don't be afraid to get onto the whole top part of the quadricep, but that VMO tends to get pretty tight as well. So you're just on your foam roller, same thing I'm doing. And you can be like that too, yeah. So you can certainly do this. And then if you have a big surface area, I'm just laying on my side to not have to use my abs and just move that leg around. So you have to lay down first and get your, you have a long foam roller, you're gonna have to move it, it can't be underneath your body. So I'm gonna demonstrate real quick. So it'd be on this knee. So it's a long foam roller, I gotta get it away. So here I am. Exactly. Hands-on learners, yeah. Hang on, keep going. People at home might be having the same problem. You got these big foam rollers, you need to kind of angle it. Now you're doing that same thing as I am. Just moving it around on the inside of that VMO. And if you want to, you can get into this position. I have to move my foam roller away from me so it's that other leg is not in the way. So it's allowing me to get right above the knee joint, kneecap. And I can even get my lateral. So if you're here, foam rolling, okay, now you can just come up and roll the outside edge of the quad. If you have a little ball, right, we now just, again, go from here to rolling over, placing that ball kind of on above the kneecap, holding ourselves in a semi-plank and getting those tissues on the outside edge of the quad. Vastus lateralis. You got these big quads that come down here and here. So let's go to that other side. So we spent a little bit more time, but ideally we only need to spend like a couple minutes on each side, maybe a minute. I mean, the more you spend, obviously the softer those tissues will get. Just enough to release a little bit of the tension. If you're not used to doing this soft tissue massage for yourself, you always want to start out with a small amount, just like anything else, right? You get into running and walking. Oh, I do 5 miles a day. That's what you started out with? Wow, that's a lot of volume, right? Hard to empathize when we start out with getting so sore because we do massive amounts. Little bit goes a long way. It really does. So I'm just giving that visual. If you have that foam roller, you kind of angle it and you're getting that vastus medialis, kind of playing around with the angle of your leg, putting a little pressure into it. And then let's go ahead and start moving to the lateral, the outside edge. Again, right above the kneecap, or just this whole area here, depending upon if you have a long, big water or a big foam roller or a water bottle. I have this lacrosse ball, which is really hard, so I'm having to hold a lot of my body up, because if I lay my whole weight on here, it is not going to feel good at all. So just enough pressure to start to find those tight spots. Now this is going to bring blood to the surface, right? So you want to make sure you're drinking lots of water. Some of you that bruise easy might tend to get a little bruising. Not going to kill you. Just make sure you keep flushing it out. Okay, so we just played around with where those quads come down across the knee here, up in here. You really don't ever want to be doing foam rolling right on your patella tendon unless you have those really squishy balls some of you have gotten before. So we are going to find a spot by our wall or our chair. You can find a foam padding. You can get a pillow. You can roll your mat up like mine is. Chair, couch, or wall. So if this was a wall going straight up and down, I can get my foot up against that wall and start to bring my knee close to the wall. My top of my foot would be up like this, so it's actually going to be a great mobility for the front of the foot as well. If you have a chair, a couch, you just kind of rest your ankle, your foot, whatever touches there, depending upon the length of your leg. So that back knee is going to be on the pad. The closer you can get your knee to your chair or the wall, the better. So here's the tricky part right now. I'm just balancing on this front knee. I'm going to try to step that leg forward. For some of you, it might be easier to get this front leg in place and then bend the back leg and get it on your chair or your couch. Good. Make sure that padding or that towel is right next to your couch or your chair. Front leg is in front. Keep letting you play around. So right here, this in itself, so the hip's going to want to bend if we're really tight. Your goal is to just release, and you're getting that whole quad stretch. Okay, for some of you, this is enough. So you can go in and out of this a little bit, or just hold it and let the front of the thigh stretch. Okay. Again, if your hip is bent, that is how tight your quads are, right? You need, because right now we're starting with our knee bent. Then, as you become more mobile, you bring yourself up onto your thigh. You might even be able to bring your hip towards your ankle or your heel, right? Which is really allowing that knee to stay bent and lengthen here. So keep holding. We're going to do this for another 45 seconds. Breathe into it. Move in and out in any little position. I should have handed out some yoga blocks, but you could always build your floor up to you if you're practicing this one at home too. If you really need to, it's hard for you to get the hands down and drive the hips forward. So here's where we ultimately want to be. Foot up against the wall or the chair or the couch, and pressing through that front leg, lengthening through here. This is all connected, so if you're able to, if you're up already, then adding some trunk, lateral or side flexion away from that hip. Those of you that have tensor fascia latae issues, iliotibial band, you're starting to stretch those out from the top. Trochanteric bursitis, and go ahead and come down. Let's stand up because that's pretty intense. Move those hips around a little bit. Load them up. It is very hard to, as we know, mobilize really stiff muscle fibers that really don't lengthen and move. So the myofascial stuff, doing traction stuff is much better. If I was able to do traction on your hips and show you that, the attachments, this would be 10 times easier because now you're going to move better. in your joint. So getting yourself onto the ground. So if you want to start with this is how I get into it, but it doesn't mean it's easier. So play around with whatever you can. I end up dropping my knee here. Again, if you have the wall, you're going to have to kind of get your foot on that wall as well, probably, and then slide your foot will just be straight. Get that knee as close as you can to the wall as much as it lets you bend. Hands are on the inside of that front leg once you get that front leg there. And this is where you start to work on step 1, which is to keep that knee up. So really all this is the good old pulling your heel to your seat stretch. Same thing, right? And then building up to here. But I'm letting us use our chair or whatever you have there to just relax that quad instead of using the arms and the balance. Second step is to bring up. If you already feel a pretty intense stretch here, if your hip's not straight, you definitely probably shouldn't come straight up and down. You should just let it work on here and then eventually get into that up position, getting the hip closer towards the heel. And we're staying here for a while longer. And you can always add the arm with a little lateral flexion away from that knee that's on the ground. Come out of it. We'll stand up again. We'll load those hips and move around a little. Just walking around. Now, as intense as that was, stretching here, do your hips feel a little bit looser? A little? So it's a big reason it's hard for us to get into a squat. These guys are so tight, they don't want to stretch, right? So they're fighting against these hamstrings. They're like, I can't pull you down, you're too tight, right? The more we loosen them up, they're able to lengthen. And I mean, they still lengthen, but we're not fighting through those tight tissues all of the while. So let's go ahead and have a seat again. I think because it's been a while, I don't think we did neck last week. I know we did a lot of shoulder stuff, but let's concentrate on our neck. I'm hoping that everyone has, well, we can't do that because of the foam roller, actually. We'll do I'm going to say, okay, so people at home that have have a ball of some sort, okay, or a water bottle, just strategically position it, and you can start to do some neck side to side, okay? If you don't have something like that at home, then I want you to work on going into your thoracic spine again, like we did last week, relaxing the head into the hand. My shoulder blades are just butting up against my foam roller, and I'm going to open and close. Open and close. So we're not weighed down on the bottom of our rib cage. We're butting right up against our shoulder blades. Buns are on the ground. And open, close. If you've got your ball, you're working on your neck today. And you're just turning side to side. You can hold that ball in place with your fingertips, or you can just hold it up against those tight tissues. You start at the base of the skull and you work your way down those muscles here. You can even get into your scalings if you feel comfortable on the side of your neck. Keep working on that side for about 30 more seconds, and then I'll have you switch. You're going the wrong way. There, buns in the ground. Big chest opener. Move your body that way more. Move your body that way more. Up on the foam roller. Hands behind your head. This way. Your whole body. This foam roller needs to be down. Keep going. So your shoulder blades. Keep going. Put your butt on the ground. Bend your knees. There, right there. Just a hair. All right, if you're doing your neck, we're now going to go to that other side here. So showing you that position again. If you don't feel comfortable getting that water bottle or something on there, you could even just do some massaging of yourself. I'm not even moving my fingers. I'm just pressing into those tissues and I'm moving them underneath my fingers. Or just put pressure where you feel it. Base of the skull, all the way down. Maybe even into your scalings here on the front of your neck. About 30 more seconds on that side. Good. Those of you that are still working on opening up around your foam roller, opening up, just relax and let that chest open up. To relax there. And I'm going to have you go ahead and just lay. Today I want us to lay on our bellies with our palms facing up towards the ceiling, relaxing the tops of your feet on the floor, and you're going to turn your head to the left. See if you can get the left ear or the right ear and the right side of the jaw onto the floor. And relax. Pay attention to what the shoulders are doing here. Is your chin pushing down towards your left shoulder? If so, lengthen that space between your chin, your left shoulder. Maybe slide those fingertips further down to the floor or to the toes. And breathe here. This is the same movement that we do when we look over our shoulders or we say no. Just relax into this. We don't spend a lot of time in our postures in this class. There is nothing wrong with laying here with your head turned to the side for a good 2, 3, 4 minutes at home. You're going to find one side turns better than the other. You want to focus in on the side that tends to be much tighter. And we're going to turn that head to the right now slowly, because you just we're stretching those neck muscles and had them on tension for a little while. So you want to give them the respect to move slowly. And reset again. If your chin is going toward your shoulder, lengthen that neck a little. Fingertips go towards the toes. Slowly bring that head back into neutral. And we're going to finish with another stretch here. We really did a lot of hip and lower back motion, so I want to take advantage of now lengthening through the inner thighs. So I'm just turning my mat sideways so that I can open up my legs really wide. So your legs are wide, your toes are together or close together. Just depends upon how much your knee will bend. You'll walk your hands kind of out in front a little bit and keep sinking back. So your goal is to kind of sit the buns back towards your heels, and you can get yourself onto your forearms. And if this is enough here, or maybe up here is enough, so I'm just going to show from the other position here. So my knees go really wide, my toes together, and then I work on sitting my buns back, getting my forearms. And then the next step, if you want to try to go into a little bit different stretch here, is get the body to come forward. The buns may be kind of stuck in the air. The more you move forward, you open up, and then the pelvis goes towards the ground in a little froggy position. So you just have to play around a little bit. Start here, which is usually more comfortable for most people, and then working on progressing to the forearms and walking out and just letting the pelvis continue to come forward to the ground. And then those of you that are able to get the pelvis towards the ground and lay flat again, you're going to work on bringing the lower leg away from the ground and back to the ground. I am just going to show you a different position so you see what I'm talking about. So here I am in my froggy, and now I'm going to go into internal rotation in my hips and down. Or you're still just sitting back into your hips and working on that stretch, whatever feels comfortable. Toes together. There you go. And whenever you're ready, you'll bring it back up to sitting. So those of you that may not know, and of course, it would be easier to do in person, but because I do a lot of things with resistance bands like traction and distraction and stuff, but I also do small group focuses, like with focused content, not just overall fitness, where I'm doing a little bit of everything. But I do an injury management and recovery, strength and recovery. I call it injury management because we're managing all kinds of issues, going on in our body here and there. So I just want to let you know that if that's something you're interested in, I focus in on breaking it down into body parts each week, similar to what we do here, but maybe digging in a little bit deeper and really working on giving homework and specific focuses in different areas. So if anyone's ever interested, just let me know. So it's a great compliment or building up from what we do in here. So, well, thank you for joining me today for restoration. Yes, hopefully you feel a little bit more manipulated and looser, or at least aware, maybe tighter in some areas because you really stretched them out and moved them.